At She Can, we tell women's stories. We're building up the largest online library of women role models because it's easier to be what you can see. So we're interviewing women from all over the world and all walks of life. And I'm really excited to talk to Ramona Liberoff today. Ramona, welcome. You are a really interesting person to talk to for many different reasons, and we'll get to that. You're right now in the third phase of your life, in your exploratory phase. So you were the executive director for PACE, the platform for accelerating the circular economy. And before that, you were a venture partner at Antler, coaching founders that build companies with Antler, an early stage seed capital firm. So you've been wearing many different hats. You've had 30 years of work. The first half working with global corporates to tackle new markets and innovation. The second half to change systems where investment, innovation, and global goals meet. And now is your third phase, and you're exploring what that should be. And I'm excited to talk to you at this point because you really have a view that I haven't really had with any other woman before. And I really want to know, how are you in this third phase? How are you approaching it? Tell us a little bit more about where you're at with your thoughts at this point in time. And then we're going to get into your journey and understand how you got to where you are today.
Great. Thanks so much, Stephanie, for having me. It's a real pleasure and a privilege. And I agree with you completely. Many, especially if we try and do things that are a bit unusual or risky, we'll find ourselves with periods in between. All I can say is I highly recommend it because it's a great time to make sense and also to rest and recover for the next charge. Jobs today like this, particularly creating impact, are not easy to do. And they also benefit from reflection and learning. So even though it's only been a few weeks since I left Pace, I'm already feeling like I can start to get my energy back, and I'm very excited about what's next.
Ramona, so tell us a bit more about your journey. How did you get to Antler? How did you get to Pace? What were the pivotal moments in your journey?
Well, I mean, as you mentioned, Stephanie, I've been working for 30 years, and I guess a bit unusually, I've worked in many different places and also switched fields, which I think many people really want to do and should do, because frankly, the jobs of tomorrow aren't even invented yet today. So when I came out of university with halfway through a humanities PhD that I had no intention of completing, because I would have made the world's worst academic, I can tell you that right now. I went to work in communications, in global communications, and from that into consultancy, which is a great sort of field to be exposed to lots of different variety and learn some core skills. And then on from that into the pivot that you described, which has really been about the last sort of 12, 14 years or so of figuring out how to bring together finance, innovation, and things like the global goals. They weren't even named when I started this journey. So, in a personal capacity as well as a professional capacity, I've been investing in and creating startups for some years to solve problems and to demonstrate what's possible. But I've also worked in a more institutional capacity. So, really, the thing that ties together the last decade or more is trying to make sure we can figure out how to get as fast as possible through some of the challenges that we have without oversimplifying them. Because sometimes startups, as they get easier and easier to found, can also become more and more focused on problems that are very small rather than the very big ones we need to fix.
The systems change ones, yeah.
Indeed.
Ramona, you have been instrumental in setting companies up and coaching founders. What are your biggest takeaways, would you say?
Well, the first thing is it really is something that almost anyone can do. The founders I've worked with have been every age, from fresh university graduates all the way through to people in their 60s and 70s, and even once beyond. I think it's also really important to know it's a team sport. The best companies that have the best chance to succeed have a balance in their team from the beginning. So, two, three, or four founders is ideal, that all bring to the table something distinctive and all with very clear roles. The third thing is the best founding teams, in my mind, to my thesis, are those that actually identify a significant enough challenge that has both social and environmental components. If
Mhm.
I may, I'll mention an example that's dear to my heart, and actually the reason why I can afford to take a few months off, uh, because I was part of creating a company called Ride Tandem 4 years ago. Transport poverty. which we don't think about if we live in cities or we have moderate to high incomes because our needs are very well met. We don't need a car. We have abundant, cheap public transport. But that's not the reality for over 100 million people in the EU alone.
Mm.
Plus, we also need to really figure out ways to reduce the carbon emissions from the transport sector. And Ride Tandem has done both of that, both of those things, returning more than 100 million pounds to low-wage workers' pockets and saving, at this point, a few 100 million tons of carbon as well. Simply by aggregating demand for edge of town, out of town, seasonal workforces. So their clients are the employers or hospitals or universities, and the people who benefit from this service are those who've been badly served by public transport to date. So that's an example of the kind of company and team that I'm really proud to have been part of.
Yeah, amazing, Ramona. So, what would you say is your main motivator going forwards? What do you feel all of this experience and all of this wisdom that you have now aggregated? How does that trickle down? What are the sort of what is the magic dust that remains?
It's a great question. I mean, I'm not sure that I'm there yet, but one hint that I have toward it is I think we're becoming somehow cynical and exhausted in our level of ambition and our willingness to commit to work with others. These system challenges require a deep and very honest form of collaboration. We have to admit these things are difficult. We've done all the low-hanging fruit, the things that make for great press releases,
Mm,
switching to renewable energy now that it's become cheap. The things that remain are really tough calls. They're about reducing the amount of overproduction we have in the world and stopping promoting a culture of overproduction. They're about tackling deep inbuilt inequities in our systems and believe if you've heard of the development goals, I've kind of realized that you have to actually have an ambition and a really clear view of the system you want to shift and a commitment to that. So somehow helping others create that deep collaborative infrastructure and long-term commitment. Part of what I started to do at pace, but with insufficient resources and time. But I
mm.
definitely got a clue as to how that can be done and a feeling that really much more of it must be done.
So, what do you feel are the sort of top three things to tackle in the next 10 years?
So, luckily for me, someone's already written the book on this. The Wonderful Club of Rome, in their book Earth for All, describes the five big system shifts that we need. What I think is really important about that is that people tend to think of climate change as the thing to fight, when actually climate change is a symptom
Yeah.
of a system that does not serve us. So, the combination of restoring equity and dignity in the world, allowing with the clear understanding that there are limits to growth, as a friend of mine likes to say, nothing enjoys unlimited growth other than cancer.
Yeah.
So we have to actually be mindful that we need to spread our resources in a more equitable way and allow sufficiency for everyone, while recognizing there's still so much waste and overproduction that there's a lot there to play for. We just have to change our idea of what good looks like and think more of others
Yeah.
rather than just ourselves.
Change the narratives. Yeah.
Well, and also change the economic models and the subsidies. It's not just about narrative, although a good narrative is a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Ramona, so what do you feel are your top qualities that you bring to the table that really serve you every day in bringing your big visions to the world and executing them?
Well, I mean, I'm still learning, so I think that's really, really important. A lot of people value in this world deep expertise, but that expertise may have been acquired 20 or 30 years ago by the time someone gets to a position of power. And frankly, at that point, usually the underlying thinking may have been improved upon. So the good thing I bring is I'm a generalist and a constant learner. I always have a very open mind. I think the second thing is I'm usually able to take complex information and make it much simpler to understand. Of course, the task is not to oversimplify it, but to really make it clear. And I suppose the third is just a lot of energy and the ability to identify people with whom to work who share not only my values, but also bring an incredible array of skills to the table. So getting the best out of a team, because as I said before, system change is not a solo sport.
Yeah, yeah. Ramona, so I'm wondering, You have been on the investment side. You had the power to write checks. I want to talk about that. We have only 2% of venture capital money going to women founders. That's a terrible, dismal data that we still live with today, and it seems to get worse before it's going to get better. So I think give us a little bit of your vision of how this can be changed. And then afterwards, we're going to talk about some tips.
Sure. I think a lot of the thinking in this area is a little bit backwards. So a lot of times people think women have to change in order to attract funding. The system actually needs to change. There are a lot of incredible female founders out there who typically do a lot more with a lot less, and they stretch themselves. They find resources for free. They work incredibly hard, and they often have extremely good ideas. However, we do know that because the power base, particularly in early stage investing, is primarily and default male, the questions women get are usually about what their risks of failure rather than their right to succeed. So we
Mm,
have to do two things broadly. I was part of an early investing syndicate that actually made investing in management teams with at least one female founder the norm.
mhm.
And that investment group was 70% women, 30% men, because men can be very good allies in all of this.
Yeah.
So at Angel Academy is what it's called. It's in the UK. Sarah Turner, who created it, has done a phenomenal job of it, and I'd speak to her about this as well.
Yeah.
This is a very good question. But I also think we need far more women in decision-making positions in all of the venture capital organizations. When they report data on diversity, they quite often tout the fact that they have a lot of junior women, but those junior women do not get promoted into decision-making positions or onto the investment committee.
Yeah.
That is the thing that needs to change. And to be honest, I've witnessed this very clearly. Despite having more than a decade of really clear, solid investing experience, I'm still not considered or approached for those sorts of roles because in our mind, it really is default male. Nice little stat, if venture capital people, partners, men have daughters, they are more likely to invest in women. That's not something we can bank on. So we really need to change
Yeah.
the dynamic both at the early stage and also later on, and get more women into angel investing. It's
Yeah.
crucial.
Yeah, I think that's the crucial road. Ramona, give us some top tips for women who are now at the other side, like myself, who are running a startup, who are looking for investment. What top tips would you give them?
I mean, the first thing is find investors who share your values. Most investors won't. So one can spend a lot of time and energy and also get very deflated by trying to pitch investors who have actually no interest in your thesis or in you
Mhm.
as a founder.
Yeah.
Um, what I will say is the ones that do, the ones that are aligned, can be great thought partners and can actually be leveraged, particularly in the early stages of business, can be leveraged as an advisory board or something else to bring
Mm,
not just money, but also advice. And the best early stage startups I know do that very well.
yeah.
I think the other thing is also the value of a diverse team. I think it's dangerous in a way to ghettoize oneself. And I've had lively conversations with a couple of friends who do great work in trying to support women-only teams, but really struggle to raise the capital. And I think it's funny, it's like the discussion we're having about the presidential ticket in the United States right now. The idea of two women is still too radical for many people. It shouldn't be. It
No.
absolutely shouldn't be. But do we want to win or do we want to make a point? And like I said, I think any good team needs a few founders and not just one. So there is strength in numbers. So find a team. Those are my two tips.
Amazing, Ramona. I'm wondering, what do you feel were the biggest challenges in your career being an investor or doing the startups, and how did you overcome them? Is there a red sort of string across all of those? Is there sort of, something that really pops up with
Mhm.
most startups or most young companies seeking investment or having just gotten investment?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about me and then the companies. So first, the companies. There was a great piece of work done that showed that most companies, the biggest problem they have is not the idea, it's not the team, it's timing.
Yeah.
Most companies come to market either too early or too late. If they
Mm,
come to market too early, there's no market to greet them, they can never raise funding, and they usually run out of cash. If they come to market too late, then the competitive dynamics mean if they can't raise a huge amount of money, they'll never be able to compete.
Yeah.
And it's astonishing how little time a lot of startups spend thinking about timing.
Mm,
And recognizing if it might be too early, in which case they should press pause and wait and decide when is the right time and why, or when it's too late and they should pivot to find something more distinctive.
mm,
So that's one little tidbit around timing and the importance of
yeah,
it. And
yeah.
I think for me, the challenge and the strength are two sides of the same coin. As I like to say, I'm foreign, 50-ish, and female. And while that brings often a really interesting perspective, many people wish to hire in their own image. And particularly somewhere like Germany, where both technical expertise and conservatism are still very much part of the fabric. It
Mm,
does mean that for people like me, we have to find very unusual ways of pivoting
mm.
ourselves into roles. And we may also end up sometimes with the glass cliff scenario, as in the job that was so impossible that no one could ever succeed at doing it. So I'm trying to learn my lessons from this and figure out how that plays into the next thing, because I'm not done yet.
No, I can see that, and I hope not. Ramona, what are you most proud of to date?
I think I am most proud of the impact that I've been part of creating, whether that's on gender outcomes in East Africa and South Asia or about the speed of renewable innovation. But what I'd say is part of my, as I said, my strengths is being able to identify, hire, motivate, and keep really brilliant people. And that impact is entirely down to these teams that I've had the privilege of working with and often stay very close to, even if I change position. There's a lot of alumni of my teams over the years who I'm so happy to see, coming into their own and really flourishing and making huge impact on their own.
Ramona, if you had a wand and you could change one thing, what would that be?
Just one thing, that's so hard.
I know.
But I think I would give everyone a blindfold because I think we make so many assumptions on characteristics that at the end of the day have nothing to do with potential. So I
Mm,
would want people to not see gender or ethnicity or religion or social class or education and instead just see the raw potential that I see everywhere around me. I think we'd be much healthier societies if that were the case.
what a brilliant answer, Ramona. So tell us a little bit about your next couple of years. Where I understand this is exploratory for you. Are there any dreams or plans in place?
Dreams, yes. Plans, no. I think what I've decided though is a North Star, which is whatever I do next, it has to be with people whose values I share. And that's one of the things that almost never comes up really in
Mhm,
exploring opportunities. Usually you get so caught up in the competition to get the role of whatever kind, that you get to the finish line and you don't actually realize who the people are that you'll be working for or with.
mm,
So from experience, I've realized that's incredibly important to me. Um, and I think I also, in addition to values, one of the things I want to make sure is that if I do something impact oriented, I want to make sure it is not a fig leaf or a vanity project. There has to be seriousness of intent, seriousness of purpose, and a reality about how long it takes to make a difference. Quite often, a lot of the metrics in these areas default to things like holding events and writing reports because you can see
mm,
them and it gives
mm,
someone a list to tick off.
mm.
That is not change. That is not what I'm after.
Yeah. Ramona, thank you so much for this unbelievably inspiring conversation of sharing all your incredible tips. And you had tips for every question I asked. So I'm so thankful. And what a privilege to talk to you today.
No, my pleasure, Stephanie. The privilege is mine. Thanks ever so much for having me.